president's father. What time would it be if all the clocks stopped? Zen proverb. A number of years ago, I was the scholar in residence at a conservative synagogue in upstate New York. I arrived on a Friday in the late afternoon. The president of the congregation, a woman, greeted me warmly at the front door and ushered me into the living room, where she introduced me to a small gathering of people. We talked for a while about this and that. They were all friendly. 6 o'clock came around and we sat down for dinner in a small dining room. There were 7 of us. After dinner, we went to the synagogue, and the president seated me in shul next to her father. His name was Tiny. He was 6 feet 5 inches tall. Tiny was a thin man in his late 70s, lanky with sparkling brown eyes, long arms, long legs, long hands, and fingers. He was wearing his tallis, prayer shawl, and yarmulke, skull cap, as was the custom in conservative synagogues on Shabbos evening. We were sitting in the middle of the sanctuary. Tiny immediately began talking to me, telling me Jewish jokes and all about his life growing up in Brooklyn, playing on the ships and around the yard and dock at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. I had the feeling as we talked that people around us were watching. I leaned over and said to Tiny, "Tiny, is it all right if we talk like this in the middle of the service?" The men were davening, praying intently up on the bima. "Yes, Dick, it's all right. And if anyone gives you a dirty look or says anything, just tell them that Tiny said it was all right." We laughed, and he continued to tell me jokes and stories about his life growing up in Brooklyn. All of a sudden, they stopped talking. Tiny stopped talking to me. The men on the bima had reached that portion in the Torah known as Eiche, curses. Tiny not only stopped talking to me, but he began davening, praying, rocking back and forth, up and down, bending his head forward and back. So intent and concentrated was he on his praying that he didn't notice at all that I was there. This went on for 20 minutes. Tiny completely absorbed within himself, praying, if you will, to God, as though nothing else existed except the two of them. Yes, the two of them, Tiny and the divine, had become one. At the end of the service, I, as the scholar in residence, was to give 2 lectures, one after the Kiddush that evening, the other on Saturday after services and lunch in the afternoon. Tiny looked me straight in the eyes and said to me, half seriously, half in jest, "I found myself, Dick. At least you're good for something." I never forgot Tiny's remark. It put me right in my place, and for the last 12 years has kept me there. As a man in a lecture I attended the other evening said, "I have found the truth, which once having been found can never be lost." I was also reminded of the Rebbe of Kotzk's wonderful words to a prospective disciple, a young man who had come to join his court. The Rebbe asked him, "Why have you come to me?" The young man answered, "In order to find God." The Rebbe replied, "Then you didn't have to come here. You could have stayed at home and found him there, because God is everywhere. This embarrassed the prospective disciple, who asked, "Then why should I come to you, Rebbe?" The Rebbe answered, "In order to find yourself. That is why you should come to me." I have never forgotten this great lesson, Tiny's great lesson. Always be yourself, and even if you lose yourself, find yourself as quickly as possible, or as the Zen saying has it, "In the dark I lost sight of my shadow, I've found it again by the fire I lit." Yes, whenever I think I am doing something really important, I always remember Tiny's humbling remark to me, "I found myself, Dick. At least you're good for something." And again I light the fire and find my shadow, which I had lost sight of. If there is one thing I've learned in 81 years, it's not to take myself or life too seriously, but to laugh at myself and at life, or as Albert Einstein so aptly put it, "God, if you forgive me all the little jokes I've played on you, I'll forgive you the one great big joke you played on me." And we do want to hope that Albert Einstein's mother and father were indeed having a good time on the night they conceived him.